land on its feet. Now that's impressive. Let's rewind to the beginning, shall we? Back in the day, the area we now call Luxembourg was roaming ground for Celtic tribes. Then those toga-wearing Romans showed up, bringing their love of baths and organized conquest. They built a fort on a rocky outcrop called Luxembourg. Try saying that 5 times fast, which eventually morphed into Luxembourg. Catchy, right? Fast forward a few centuries and Christianity arrives on the scene. Enter Saint Willibrord, our first Luxembourgish celebrity. This guy was basically a rock star monk who founded an abbey and helped spread the good word. Think of him as the original influencer, but instead of promoting beauty products, he was all about that religious life. Now the Middle Ages were a wild time to be alive and Luxembourg was right in the thick of it. The place became a coveted prize, passed back and forth between powerful empires like a hot potato. But through it all, Luxembourg endured, growing into a proper medieval city with a castle, fortifications, and everything. They even managed to squeeze in a few cultural achievements along the way, like developing their own language, Luxembourgish. It's a mouthful, literally. So there you have it, Luxembourg's early years, a whirlwind of invasions, religious fervor, and the slow but steady rise of a nation. Who knew such a small place could pack so much history into a few centuries? Hold on tight because things are about to get complicated. The late Middle Ages saw Luxembourg become a duchy, which basically means it was ruled by a duke. Duh. These weren't your average run-of-the-mill dukes though. We're talking about ambitious power players who married into some of Europe's most influential families. One dynasty, the House of Luxembourg, even managed to snag the Holy Roman Empire's crown, not once, but 4 times. Talk about punching above your weight class. For a while there, Luxembourg was calling the shots in Europe. They were basically the cool kids everyone wanted to sit with at the lunch table. But like any good reality show, there was plenty of drama. Dynastic struggles, inheritance disputes, you name it, Luxembourg had it. And let's not forget about those pesky neighbors who couldn't resist trying to get their hands on this strategically important piece of land. Despite the constant power struggles and territorial tug-of-war, Luxembourg managed to maintain its unique identity. They were like the chameleons of Europe, adapting to new rulers and changing allegiances while always holding on to their core values. The early modern period was a time of great upheaval in Europe, and Luxembourg found itself caught in the crossfire again. Wars raged, empires clashed, and Luxembourg was often treated like a pawn in a high-stakes game of chess. It wasn't pretty, but hey, at least it made for some interesting history, right? The good news is that throughout it all, Luxembourg's strategic importance meant that everyone wanted a piece of it. The bad news is that everyone wanted a piece of it. The country was occupied, partitioned, and even briefly annexed by France. Talk about a rough couple of centuries. But just when it seemed like Luxembourg might disappear from the map altogether, something remarkable happened. They declared their independence in 1839. Sure, it took a bit of international wrangling and a few compromises like losing more than half their territory, but they finally became their own boss. So how did this tiny nation survive centuries of conflict and political turmoil? Resilience, my friends, pure and simple. Luxembourg might have been knocked down a few times, but they always got back up, dusted themselves off and said, "Is that all you got?" The 20th century was a wild ride for everyone, and Luxembourg was no exception. Despite declaring neutrality, they found themselves occupied in both world wars. Talk about bad luck. But even in the darkest of times, the Luxembourgish spirit shone through. They resisted Nazi occupation with acts of defiance, big and small, proving that even a small nation could stand up to tyranny. And after the war, Luxembourg emerged as a champion of peace and international cooperation. They ditched their neutral stance and jumped headfirst into the project of building a united Europe. They hosted European institutions, adopted the euro, and generally embraced the whole "let's all get along" vibe. From playing host to international organizations to punching above their weight in the global economy, Luxembourg proved that size isn't everything. They were like the overachiever of Europe, always striving to make a difference in the world. Now let's talk money, honey. For a country that's basically the size of a postage stamp, Luxembourg has an economy that could rival some of the biggest players on the planet. So how did this tiny nation become an economic powerhouse? Well, it all started with steel. Back in the day, Luxembourg had a whole lot of iron ore, and they weren't afraid to use it. They built a thriving steel industry that fueled their economy for decades. But when the steel industry declined, did Luxembourg panic? Nope, they simply reinvented themselves. They diversified their economy, focusing on finance, investment, and high-tech industries. They became a magnet for international companies and a hub for cross-border business. And let's be real, their favorable tax policies didn't hurt either. Today, Luxembourg boasts one of the highest GDP per capita in the world. Not bad for a country that could practically fit inside a large park, eh? So, where does Luxembourg stand today? Well, they're still here, still thriving, and still proving that good things come in small packages. They've got a stable democracy, a high standard of living, and a knack for adapting to the times. They're a melting pot of cultures, with a unique blend of old-world charm and modern sophistication. They've got fairy tale castles, Michelin-starred restaurants, and a thriving arts and culture scene. What's not to love? As for the future, well, Luxembourg is facing its fair share of challenges just like everyone else. But if history has taught us anything, it's that this tiny nation is nothing if not resilient. So here's to you, Luxembourg, a country that's small in size but big on heart, history, and sheer determination. You've come a long way, baby, and we can't wait to see what you do next.